Welcome to Sutures and Cents, where Tegaderm meets top line revenue and Surgiflow meets soft costs. My name is Mark Copeland. Ryan Pistone is our director and producer and does everything. And we talk business to clinical and clinical business to business in ambulatory surgery centers and hospitals. I messed that up. Hospitals up and down the East Coast and all across the country. So today, let's talk about what every single rep and every company I talk to during these discovery calls, they all seem to say to me, hey, well, what would you do if you were me? How would you change what we do or what I do? That's a really good question, right? And they often say, what would you do if you were me? And I'm like, well, I am you. I'm in sales. I'm in medical device sales. So I know what you're dealing with and facing because I deal with and face it every day as well and have for quite some time. So what I urge them all to try to do, and I'll do here too, is think of value analysis as the customer, not all the time, because you're calling on your doctors, your nurses, your clinical team, whomever it is that you call on. But you have to think of value analysis at some point as the customer because you need buy-in from the Value Analysis Committee. And I urge people to think that way. The more you think that way, likely the better you'll do, but you must at least do it at some point during your process, right? So if you have a customer, let's say you call on hematologists, and you've been doing it for some time. If I said to you, hey, how do hematologists win? What are they trying to avoid? What are their goals? What matters to them? You as a good rep would likely know, probably talk a good bit about it. I would add parenthetically, if you can't, you're not a very good rep. That's a different story. But you'd be able to rattle it off. Trying to do this, trying to do that. Don't want this, trying to accomplish that, struggling with this, right? You're probably pretty good at it. So if you think of value analysis as a customer, or at least a customer segment, let's say, I would ask the same questions. What are they struggling with? And that's what we're going to talk about a little today. What are they struggling with? What are their goals? How do they win? Right? And the answers are actually everywhere. And I mean literally websites, billboards, meeting notes, everywhere, conversations. They, like most customers, they tell you what they're struggling with and what they're trying to accomplish. Question is sometimes, do we listen? And we'll talk about more of that stuff in other future podcasts. But here's what I'll give you a couple of things that right now matter to health systems almost across the board, regardless of where you are. Here, I'm just going to give you some in no particular order, and we'll talk about each one briefly. Staff retention. Now, I think it's pretty obvious if you're in hospitals or health systems or ambulatory surgery centers or frankly anywhere in the United States, seems to be a shortage of staff. And it's absolutely the case in health systems and hospitals and ambulatory surgery centers. We see less people with more work and new managers training new employees everywhere. Staff retention is a big thing for health systems right now. Cost containment, like it always is. But right now, health systems coming out of COVID are struggling with razor thin margins. The first thing when you have razor thin margins, everybody does. It's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. Cut costs. How can we cut costs? Not saying it's the right thing to do, just saying it's the normal thing to do. Here's one, health equity. Now, we're going to do something about health equity in the future, but here's what health equity is. Everyone, regardless of race, color, creed, economics, where they live, who they are, who they pray to, who they love, are entitled to the same outcomes as everybody else. So that's health equity. And I'm going to talk on a future brief podcast about how health equity is something you should be thinking about from your product standpoint. You might be able to help some hospitals improve their health equity mission. It's not a strategy, it's a mission. How about vendor standardization? Wouldn't it be nice if you got all your stuff from the same place? Yeah, usually lowers your prices, usually lowers your costs because you're writing POs to one place. You're getting more of the same product from one vendor. You tend to be able to negotiate a lower price when you commit to higher volumes. How about this one, though? Opposite, vendor diversity. That's two things. Vendor diversity can mean I need a secondary source and even a third source. We saw a lot of this exacerbated by COVID. And then we also have guidance that we have signed and agreed to that we're going to do work with women's owned, minority owned, veteran owned. So that's also vendor diversity. How about for in our space, perioperative services, which is where I make a living, OR block utilization. Can we get our operating room to do more cases in the same amount of time or the same amount of cases in less time? Because it lowers your costs. Those are all big things that these health systems are looking for. So if you sell a product and you think that your physician or your nurse user loves it for one thing, but you think it might actually help with vendor diversity if they had a second source for a competitive product, that's something to think about. The best way to know is to talk to the people who run the facilities. Talk to your physicians, your nurses. Hey, what matters to the health system? Ask the health system. Go to their website. Look at their billboards. Look at their annual reports. It's all right there. And you might actually be able to help. You just haven't been looking or listening and hearing. We're all guilty of it. Me too. Right? But you can do this. I will help. You can sell in this arena, this new value analysis arena. You can do it. You just have to get your head up a little bit, as we say in basketball. See the floor. Don't just look at what's right in front of you. Look up and look down the court. You'll be able to see opportunity. I'm Mark Copeland. I'm the Value Analysis Whisperer. I help companies get their products approved in health systems. Thank you for joining Sutures and Cents. We'll see and hear you next time.